Hello and welcome to this month's edition of My Cyber Why. This is the webisode where we talk to people from around the world about the amazing work that they're doing in cybersecurity to keep us safe. So we don't want to focus on the bad guys and the criminals. We want to focus on the people that are spending their lives and time doing great things for cybersecurity and for privacy. And one of those amazing people is with us today, Cavoukian. She is the executive director for the Global Privacy and Security by Design Center. But in addition to being the executive director, she is actually the person that founded the entire privacy by design concept. So we have Anne to thank for bringing privacy by design to the world. So thank you very much, Anne, for doing that. In addition,
Diana, thank you.
In addition to that, you're very busy. You're also a faculty fellow at Arizona State University's Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law, and you're a senior fellow at Ryerson University. So I'm not quite sure how you have time to do all of that, but thank you for doing all of that. And thanks so much for being here today. So to get us kicked off, as you know, we have four questions that we answer in My Cyber Why. And the first one is who's Anne? Who's Anne Cavoukian?
I have to tell you that my Armenian background has made a big difference in my life, because we came to Canada when I was 4 years old. But what my parents and my grandparents had to endure, my grandparents just barely escaped the Armenian genocide. And they told me so many stories about what it was like to be in prison there. And they had their forearms was tattooed with their prison numbers, and they had to whisper and stay contained, because if they ever uttered anything in favor of Armenian people and the Turkish guards heard them, they would be killed on the spot. So it taught me so much about the need for privacy and freedom, that we have to be in control of our lives and the personal information associated with it. So that's what got my passion for privacy and especially freedom. That leads everything that I do.
Yes. Wow. So yeah, deeply personal. Yeah, driver. And what is it that you do as the executive director and as the founder of Privacy by Design?
So a little bit of background. When I was privacy commissioner here in Canada for 3 terms, 17 years, I developed Privacy by Design. See, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a psychologist. That's my background. So I brought a very different approach to privacy than the usual one of regulatory compliance offered by laws after the fact. That's very important. But to me, it was too little too late. I wanted a model of prevention. Embed privacy protective measures proactively into the design of your operations, bake it into the code so that you can prevent the privacy harms from arising. So that's how it started. So I do a lot of work, obviously, now on Privacy by Design. We offer Privacy by Design certification with KPMG. But I really like to just put the word out on the vital importance of privacy and preventing surveillance and tracking of our activities, especially without our knowledge and consent. And I have to tell you, now with the COVID-19 crisis and this huge pandemic, it's like people are throwing privacy out the door. They're saying, well, we have to collect all this information. Well, with due respect, there are ways to collect information that are still privacy protected. You can strongly de-identify data up front and then aggregate it so no personal identifiers can be detected. See, Privacy by Design has a number of essentials. One is that privacy is the default setting, that you're automatically given privacy. You don't have to search through the terms of service or the legalese in the privacy policy to find the opt-out box. No, we say we give it to you automatically. It's the default setting. And also getting rid of the zero-sum mindset of either or, win, lose. And that's what's being promoted now. You can only have a positive gain in one area, always to the negative of the other area, so that they total to a sum of zero. Well, it's never privacy that wins in that equation, nor am I suggesting that privacy should win over other interests, but it sure as heck isn't going to lose. I want multiple gains to take place at the same time. That's called a positive sum framework. And that's what I try to teach and get the messaging out to the media. You can have public safety and privacy. There are ways to weave them together. And that's my mantra, is do not abandon privacy, abandon freedom. In times of emergencies, figure out how to do both. And we can do both. We've done it again and again. So that's what I like to get the message out on.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great point. It doesn't have to be binary. It's not that we're either we have safety or we have privacy. We can have safety and privacy together. And you make a great point. At any time when there's an inflection point in the world, some people may grab for more surveillance or more power, but it doesn't mean that just because we're having an intersection point that it's time to forget everything that we've
Exactly.
learned about. Yeah. And it was interesting you said about the psychology versus is legal. And that's a really because you're right. So many privacy officers, privacy experts in the world, they are the lawyers. And I'm wondering from the psychological perspective, when human beings feel that they've lost privacy or that privacy doesn't matter, how does that come into play?
Oh, it shrinks your cognitive bandwidth. It makes you go inward instead of doing the wild blue sky thinking and just, taking risks on crazy ideas. You don't do that. You shrink inward. And again, I say that as a psychologist, but I studied psychology in the law. So I took courses at the law school and I did empirical studies in psychology. I wanted to merge the two. So I always tell people, you have to do both. When you think of the brilliant minds in the past, Steve Jobs of Apple, for example, he used to buy a new white Mercedes, same make and model every year, every 6 months less a day. 6 months less a day, he would take the car in and buy a new one. Why? Because at that time in California, you had 6 months to get a license plate number when you buy a new car. He didn't want to be tracked. He didn't want any numbers associated with them. So he kept this up. I just think it's brilliant. And it's not, I hate the thing of, well, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear.
Mm.
Give me a break. That could have been the motto of the Stasi police and the Third Reich. It's not about having anything to hide. It's about personal control over your information and being able to have these wild, crazy ideas and benefit from them. Or if you want to release your information, by all means, be my guest. I always say privacy is not a religion. It's personal control. You want to give it away, be my guest, as long as you do it and it's your decision to do it.
Yes, that's great. And I think we've got a little bit of an inkling, but why? What drove you, in addition to what you learned as a child and watching, with your family? What is it that really continues to drive you and motivate you to ensure that we bring privacy design forward and bring it into regulations?
When I was privacy commissioner, I was privacy commissioner for 3 terms. Each term, there was a different political party as the government. And
Mm.
before they became the government, they were all interested in privacy. They really wanted to add upgrades and protect people's information, etc. Then they became the government and all that changed. They wanted to be in control of the information and do all kinds of things with it that exceeded the existing controls. So that's what I fought. I want to preserve our freedoms no matter what. And in order to do that, it's not just the private sector. My God, the public sector is possibly worse because of the additional measures they can take. And so it's critical that both public and private sector entities understand the vital need for freedom, how we can protect information legitimately. Data protection is very strong. And that's what drove me to develop Privacy by Design, which is all about embedding much needed protections into your operations.
Mm.
And this grows trust like no other, because right now there's such a trust deficit. If you employ privacy by design, I always tell companies who do this, shout it from the rooftops. Don't stay quiet about it. Put it on your website, meet with your customers and tell them, because it builds trust like no other. And customers, if you need additional consent for secondary uses that arise later on, customers always say yes. That's what companies tell me, because they've developed a trusted business relationship with their customers that is facilitated by privacy by design. So I want to make it work for everyone, not just one versus the other. Get rid of versus, either or, win lose. Let's make it multiple gains, multiple wins.
Yeah, and everybody can have access to it, and it's democratized. Yeah, thank you for, because it's so important. We look at Microsoft, we see, privacy is a human right, and it can easily get forgotten in the digital world. Both when we don't understand it, and when some entities that may want more power, more surveillance, may misrepresent what they're doing with the data. So it's wonderful that we've got an expert like you watching out internationally for
And
for
and
privacy.
if I can give one caution right now with the whole COVID-19 thing, I am so fearful of what's going to happen after the pandemic ends, because the pandemic will end. But the additional surveillance and tracking measures that are being introduced by governments right now under emergency clauses and alleged privacy statutes. They, right now, there are no sunset clauses. We need firm end dates, sunset clauses. We need the measures to be proportionate. We need transparency and accountability associated with all these additional measures they're taking. And when the pandemic ends, and hopefully the sunset clauses are set into place, then all of the data that's been collected during the pandemic should be securely deleted. These are the measures I would like all of us to keep our eyes on, because the pandemic will end, but the restrictions on our freedom and our privacy may not end. And that's what we have to ensure does not happen. So that's my fight now. We have to ensure this.
Yeah, that's a great point. That, yeah, maybe we're enacting something now in this extreme time of crisis, but it's sunset clause. Like, do we have to continue to do it? So yeah, I hope that the center and your work and governments around the world are paying attention to, what needs to be done now versus, what we want long term in terms of managing data.
And I've been shouting it from the rooftop. So
I know you have.
But believe it or not, I've had more media interviews. I have daily media interviews, but I've had more daily multiple media interviews than ever before in the last couple of weeks as a result of this pandemic. So I'm hoping people will listen to the need to ensure that our privacy and our freedom, our cherished freedoms, are preserved.
Right. And the way to do that is by design, is by building it in, by thinking about it as we create the systems and not trying to bolt and add. So, yeah. With that, is there anything that you would like people to know or to do? How could people get more involved in understanding what privacy means to them or learn more about privacy by design?
You can take a look at my website if you want. I have a lot of articles and I do a lot of interviews and short clips, so I'm happy to share that with you. But also right now, especially during the pandemic, when you are asked for your personal information in association with COVID-19, ask the questions. What are you going to be doing with it? How long will you be keeping it? Who will you be sharing it with? And will you be de-identifying the data and aggregating it? Will you be removing my personal identifiers from it? If you ask, I found if you've asked even a few questions relating to privacy, you will get stronger privacy measures associated with your data. And this is critical because if I may just remind you again, privacy forms the foundation of our freedom. We cannot have free and democratic societies without a solid foundation of privacy. So let's ensure that privacy and our cherished freedoms are preserved now and well into the future.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you so much, Anne, for your time and for the incredible work that you're doing.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for doing this.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This has been My Cyber Why with Anne Cavoukian, and we will see you next month. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.